Well, hi there. Welcome back to Coffee with Caregivers. We took a break during the month of June, as you know, to kind of regroup and discuss topics for the next 3 months and who our guests will be for each of those topics. And I'm so happy to say that we've got some great episodes planned for you now through, let's see, August, September, and October. Our guest today is somebody really special to a lot of people, and certainly to the NFPA. It's the president of our board of directors and the president of the National Foster Parent Association, Karen Poteet. And I'll introduce her in just a minute. I know you're going to be thrilled to listen to her and her words of wisdom. And get to know her a little bit and have a better understanding maybe of why the NFPA is being so successful and growing in so many ways under her really excellent leadership. The first thing I want to do, as always in these episodes, is talk to you about my cup for today. And this one says, Saved by Grace and Coffee. And you know, this was kind of interesting because a viewer of some past episodes decided that she wanted to send a cup. And she found this one, she said, at Walmart. And she said, you know what? I thought about you when I saw this cup. And so thanks so much to her for sending this and for sharing it, because indeed, that's certainly the way I believe is saved by grace and my morning cup of coffee. Now, with that said, we need to get on to the real business of today. And it's my really great honor to welcome Karen Poteet. One thing you'll notice about Karen when you are in her presence is that she is a very happy person and she smiles a lot. It's a beautiful smile, Karen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you've got some really exciting things happening in your life right now that really are not related to NFPA, but exciting for you. And then also share with us about your cup.
Okay. My husband and I became foster parents when we lived in the state of Illinois. And two little biological sisters were placed with us. The oldest one was 16 months and the baby was 4 weeks old when they joined our family. Eventually, on Christmas Eve of 2001, we had the honor and privilege of becoming an adoptive family. My work history is I've spent my entire career working in the human services arena. And I've had the pleasure during more decades than I care to think about, but I've had the pleasure of working with what I believe to be the most vulnerable populations, and that is children, individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and older adults. I just retired effective May 1st from the Oklahoma Department of Human Services. And Monday, I start a brand new position. I'm going back into the not-for-profit sector, and we'll be working in advocacy and in representing member organizations of Leading Age Oklahoma. So I'm very excited about that, and looking very much forward to being able to really continue the advocacy work. And this time it'll be focused toward older adults and persons with disabilities. And my coffee cup.
Yes.
I have this cup. Now, I do have to tell you, I'm not a coffee drinker. I love the smell of coffee, but I'm not a coffee drinker. So I do have some Diet Coke in this cup. But my best friend gave me this mug, and it says, "Strong mamas raise strong children." And I really think that in the realm of foster care, kinship care, and adoption from foster care. You have to be a strong parent. You have to be a strong mama, and hopefully, my two babies that I talked about that joined our family at 16 months and 4 weeks are now 22 years of age and 21, and so hopefully I've been able to raise some strong young women. So kudos to my best friend who lives in Central Illinois for giving me this mug.
It's always good to have friends that have lasted for many, many years and that know the beginnings of your story and have kind of watched your daughters grow and mature into truly beautiful young women. But I know too that there have been challenges along the way because of the diagnoses that you received on both of your daughters. And one of the things I was going to ask you to talk about on this episode is some about fetal alcohol syndrome, fetal alcohol effect, and how that can manifest itself in parenting children and looking towards their futures, and towards probably a lifetime of more caring for your kids than you thought maybe you would have. I know my 36-year-old daughter lives with us. She has Down syndrome, as most of the watchers know, and really is not able to be independent. She brings joy to our life every single day, as I know your daughters do too. I just love being around them. They're happy, beautiful young women, and but they bring their challenges with them, as does our daughter. You recently recorded what we call 10-minute rescue that's on our National Foster Parent Association Training Institute website. And I understand that the reviews by people who have listened to your video, watched your video, are wonderful. So would you talk to us a little bit about what you talked about in that 10-minute rescue, to kind of give people just a kind of an overview of that, and so they know that they can always go to nfpati.org and actually watch the whole 20 minutes of your video. And hopefully later on we'll have a full 90-minute workshop by you on that website as well.
Sure. Whenever the girls joined our family, I did know history was shared with me regarding the girls' medical history and social history. Both girls have been diagnosed on the fetal alcohol spectrum, and it is a spectrum, just like autism is a spectrum. In fact, one of my daughters is also on the autism spectrum, on the milder end of the autism spectrum, but she's not only on the autism spectrum, but also the fetal alcohol spectrum. So one of the things is we had knowledge. We had that going into fostering. But what my husband and I spent a lot of time doing is trying to learn about the spectrum, to learn about parenting challenges and parenting techniques, because many children on the spectrum really have some challenging behaviors. One of our daughters had really no internal self-regulatory ability, and this is what I talked about on the rescue. And so she would scream at the top of her lungs, never a tear shed, for maybe 2 hours continuously, and this might happen 2 or 3 times a day. Now you can imagine if you're trying to run a household, work a job, parent other children at home, that becomes very disruptive when this happens every single day. And it happened at home, it happened at daycare, to the point where I was really afraid that they would suspend her, kick her out of daycare, and then it would be, what am I going to do if I can't work? I don't know how I'm going to be able to parent this child. So I read, I went to workshops. I tried to learn as much as I could about the diagnosis. And then some of the things you just kind of have to learn by talking with others who've been in similar situations. Some of my best friends and some of the best advice that I get from individuals are foster kinship and adoptive families who've been through similar situations. I also talked about on this video how there are Facebook private groups that deal particularly with individuals who parent children who are on the fetal alcohol spectrum. And those are wonderful resources. Just, if nothing else, to see that you're not the only person that has these challenges and these struggles or these feelings. But the thing that I learned far too late, which is why I wanted to share it, because I wish I would have figured this out 2 or 3 years before I finally figured it out. But my one who screamed, she always loved to have something to drink. In fact, you really kind of had to watch her or watch her drink, because she would go around the house, and if someone had like this coffee cup sitting around, she might just pick it up, and you'd look over and she'd be drinking out of someone else's drink. So I finally figured out one day when she was screaming, I think I'll try to distract her and divert her attention from the screaming by offering her something to drink. Now, I didn't know if she might slap the cup out of my hand. She might spit the liquid back out at me. I didn't know what her reaction, but I thought, hey, I don't have anything to lose, so I'm going to go for it. And I made certain it was something she wanted to drink. I didn't just give her plain water. I might give her a little soda or some juice or Gatorade or something like that. She would just drink it right down. And so she'd drink and she'd swallow. And, I discovered that you can't scream and swallow simultaneously. So she'd have that cup up and she'd be swallowing, and she'd kind of pause. And I'd say, oh, you need to drink some more. She'd flip it up, she'd drink some more. I'd say, oh, I think you need a little bit more. And as time passed, it diverted her attention. It distracted her attention from the screaming, and then we could go on to something else. And like I said, I wish I had discovered that long before I did. It would have made our life a whole lot easier. But that's one of the things I talk about, that is just something that was a godsend to us just to figure that out. And then also too, on one of these Facebook groups, I mentioned this just recently, this tip about not being able to scream and swallow simultaneously. And a foster mom shared that she does that for her children who are having panic attacks. That she gives them something to drink, and once again, it kind of distracts and diverts them from the panic attack. So that's what I talk about on the rescue. I'm so excited about being able in the future to record a longer session for the NFPA TI regarding fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, and also tie into what does one do as adoptive parents when your child moves into young adulthood, and how you handle those kind of situations. Our oldest daughter is 22. She has some mild intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as some rather serious mental health diagnoses. And her psychiatrist and her pediatrician both recommended at 18 that my husband and I get adult guardianship of her. So in less than 2 weeks after she turned 18, we were in front of the judge. And so we do have adult guardianship of her. But, you know, it's and every family's different. And for some families that doesn't work. But yeah, I'm really excited because after 22, almost 23 years of parenting children with some rather significant diagnoses. You know, fetal alcohol syndrome is a medical diagnosis. It's not a mental health. It's not in the DSM-5. It's an actual medical diagnosis. So after 2 decades of parenting, not just one, but 2 children with that diagnosis, hopefully I can talk about some things that I've learned and it would be helpful for other foster kinship and adoptive families.
I know that it will be helpful. You know, we face the same thing with our Melissa, and what do you do when they become adults? And we also took guardianship because she does certainly have intellectual disabilities. But you know, it's learning about all of what's available to them when they become adults. But we need to learn about what all that is much earlier than that, while they're still young. So we can put them on interest lists, waiting lists, whatever the states might call those lists in their state. Texas used to call the list for receiving a home and community-based services waiver, which is a Medicaid waiver, a waiting list. And then they felt like that didn't sound so hot, so they called it the interest list, right? Well, it was the same list, same.
That's right.
Thousands of people on that list, right?
That's right. One of my daughters is on the list in Oklahoma. So
absolutely. And you know, but because of what I did professionally back then is working with people and children in particular with disabilities and disabling conditions of all kinds, I knew about a lot of these options that would be available as a child as well as an adult. And so I got her name on the waiting list at that time when she was 9 years old. She was 22 years old when her name finally rose to close to the top, where the state could take X number of more people and add them into the home and community-based waiver program. It was a total godsend, a true blessing. We received some services prior to that through a kind of an offshoot program, so we could get some respite care and some things like that. But that program now serves her well into adulthood, and will for the rest of her life, basically, unless we would decline it for some reason. And, you know, where would we have been because none of her doctors told us about it. Nobody at the school told us about it. Nobody was telling us. All these people who work with our daughter, nobody said, hey, do you know there's these options out there, especially for when she becomes older, and where's she going to live? Who's going to care for her? All these kinds of things. And they didn't tell us that. And so I always think about the parents out there who have children, whether they're born to them or they adopt them into their family or whatever, when they don't have a network of information available to them, and how far that puts them behind when all of a sudden their son or daughter is an adult, is over 18, and they lose all their services. I mean, it really becomes a burden on families. So, you know, I've been to conferences, Karen, where you've done workshops on this very topic about, you know, it's not just when we're raising them in foster care and then adopt them, but it's raising them for life in many situations. And how do we how do we help caregivers and parents of all kinds better learn how to get the information that they need, where to go to get it, how to ask those questions, how to advocate. You're one of the best advocates I've ever known in my life, and that's why your workshops are so good, because you figured out where do you need to go to advocate for your kids, and we're never afraid to speak up for them.
Well, it helped too that my professional career was in the human services realm,
Right.
because I knew I had more exposure than the average person to different programs, which is why I think it's incumbent on me to share that knowledge. It's like the Bible talks about, to whomever much is given, much is expected. And because I have access to that information, I feel an incumbent to share it, because a lot of families, like you said, they don't know. They don't know. They don't know who to ask. They don't know the question to ask. And sometimes, when you deal with big bureaucratic systems, you need to know who the right people are to ask and the question to ask. And so that's why I'm so excited about being able and being given this opportunity, is because I just feel very strongly that when you know something, that you need to share it with your fellow foster kinship and adoptive parents.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Being an advocate, anybody who's involved in the foster care system must be an advocate. And we don't all come prepared with the same skills to be an advocate. And I think that's why it's so important for foster parents that are tenured to mentor new families, right? And to help them learn to sometimes, you may feel like you're overstepping because you're pushing too hard or not, but that ultimately, in some cases, it's a squeaky wheel that gets the grease. And, when a lot of people need a lot of services and there are not enough services to go around, and it's just easier to kind of say no to people, no. And we have to speak up for our kids.
That's
and,
right.
I'm thinking of, and it was Melissa, but in school, when we had her, she was being bused an hour to another school district at 3 years old, right? Because it's a district, a small rural school district, didn't have any special education.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were co-opting with a much larger district. And I would go drive to that other school district and walk into the classroom, and she'd be strapped to a little chair and not able to even stand up or move around. And that happened like 3 times in a row. And I said, what are you doing? Always with the same puzzle in front of her, too. They had like 3 pieces to it. And, well, she's the only ambulatory child in the class, and we don't have enough staff to take care of them. We're changing diapers and suctioning and all. And so, that's where she's got to stay. Well, so, that started the advocacy to get her in a pre-K class for 4-year-olds and on her local campus, and then to be in regular kindergarten on her local campus, and incorporate her into the classrooms until they could bring special education services back to that district, which they did in her kindergarten year. But, her kindergarten year, I had to ask for 5 what we call in Texas ARDs, reviews of her special plan in 5 weeks. Because I'd get lip service at every one of them, and then nobody would do anything. Nothing would change. And so I finally called the Texas Education Agency, and I said, I need an advocate to come from Austin, Texas to Little Marion, where we live, because here's what's happening. Well, by golly, I had an advocate from the Texas Education Agency walk into that 5th special called meeting. And it was really interesting because I'd always been going by myself. And the principal was standing at her office door waiting for me. And she just said, not knowing who the lady was behind me, I guess, she said, well, if it's not the mother from hell again. And I'm like, what is this? You're giving me lip service. You're all signing papers that you're going to do things, and then nobody does them. You throw them in the trash. I don't know what you do with them. But the woman walking in behind me, priceless look on her face. And she just walked right beside me and got in front of me and introduced herself to that principal. And so she said, and she gave her name, and she said, and I'm here representing Melissa from the Texas Education Agency as her state advocate, and you will start to meet her needs. Now, did I enjoy being called a mother from hell? Because I'm sure I was being talked about by every teacher there that had anything to do with the principal. No, I didn't like that. I don't like to cause those kinds of issues. But if that's what it had to take in order to wake them up and get them to understand that there were some concessions that Melissa needed that were perfectly doable, then I had to do, because that was my job as a parent. I wasn't going to be intimidated, but that was totally against my nature at that time in my life. And I've become much stronger advocate, as I know you have. And those things don't scare me anymore, And sometimes I actually like a good fight once in a while. But we have to start somewhere, and I think that's the whole piece of learning from one another. That's why the training that we do is so important. That's why our conferences that we love to have every year are so important, because not only is it the information that people get in those workshops, but it's in networking and talking to each other while they're all there together, where we just learn so much about what it's like to live every day in a family that fosters, or a family that's adopted, our family who's providing kinship care, a whole new realm of situations there. I'm so proud of the NFPA because, Karen, I think that, and certainly under your leadership, we've really been able to broaden our scope of representation and advocacy to include all the caregivers. And I really like the idea that, we're really trying to include the parents of the kids who are removed from their families for whatever reason while they're working toward reunification into receiving some of these services as well, ones that would help them. Because we know that if a foster family and a kinship family are working with a bio parent in order to help them with reunification, the more communication they can have, the better, the more trusting that relationship's going to get. And we've got to give people the tools to be able to do that.
That's right.
That we can do that. We can build that through.
Absolutely. And that's why I think our recently launched NFPA-TI, the NFPA Training Institute, is wonderful because it's free.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter how someone comes to parenting, whether it's the birth parent, a step parent, a foster parent, a kinship parent, an adoptive parent. Parenting is parenting. And, now there may be some of the trainings that is targeted more towards certain categories of parenting. But, the skill and the techniques, just like when I talked about giving a child who had no self-regulation the ability to kind of take a drink, swallow, stop screaming, and calm down, that doesn't, a birth parent, that's a technique that a birth parent can use. So
Absolutely.
I'm just thrilled about the NFPA-TI and everything. I think we're just at the very beginning stages of it, and I'm so excited about all of the opportunities that it is bringing for caregivers. We have a wonderful consultant with us, Marka Stallworth, who works as a consultant with the Child Welfare League of America. And, he is working with us to secure presenters and trainers from all kind of different areas so that it will be impactful for the families that we represent?
You know, I had a phone call with Marcus yesterday, and again, working with him on some future projects, education training projects, and we were talking about, you know, the realities of every parent needing information, because, you know, kids are kids. They're going to throw something. Something's going to come up, and you're going to have to go, I haven't had to take care of that before. How am I going to handle that? Regardless of who's parenting them, they're just going to do it because they're kids. We all did it. And one of the things that we're talking about is that it just seems like when parents have had difficulties and their children were removed, and they're working in the process of reunification, that, you know, they may sometimes have some parenting classes, but they're usually pretty canned. You know, they're not individualized to the family. And, you know, how to manage your money. You know, how do you keep your job? You have a place to live. Can you get transportation? All those things in order to get your child back. You know, if you had a substance abuse problem, are you clean? I mean, all of those things that they have so much to work on. But there's rarely any time spent with these families looking at how do they then actually incorporate their children back into the family, back into where they're living, back into their routine, back into trying to maintain a job and get the kids to school or whatever it is. And the kids are going to be doing some behaviors that maybe they're not even used to, because their kids are going to say, I don't know if I trust that you're going to take care of me for real, or am I going to have to leave again, right? And no matter how much they love their parents, they want to be there. But there's this element of, and I've had many kids to come back and tell me that, I didn't know if I could trust them to really take care of me. Were they going to hurt me again? Were they going to start using again? You know, all those things. And so they do to their parents what they were doing to the foster parents. Let's see if we can act out enough to get kicked out of here, right? Let's not attach. Let's not start to trust, because that hurts too bad when it's removed, when it all goes bad. So we're not teaching families and these parents how to incorporate their kids back into the family and have methods to meet the needs of their children. And it's like Marcus and we were saying, you know, what better place to go than we're training foster parents and how to handle somebody else's kids and the behaviors that you're not used to, and for children you don't know, when some of those same things apply back to when the child goes back home. Because mama's functioning and daddy's functioning in a little bit different way. The kids are functioning in a very different way. They've been raised by other people for a while. This is just like a perfect blend and a perfect marriage for all parents to be able to come to this training opportunities, select what you need. Don't worry about the rest of them, right? Because they don't fit your situation, but glean from that. And to be able to do it 24 hours a day from your phone or from wherever else that you've got some kind of electronics to do it with, and not have to pay for it.
That's exactly right.
What a huge blessing.
Or you can get into the training and then have to come, something might happen and you could come back into the training again.
Yes, absolutely. There's no limit, you know, on how many times people can use the website. And we're always adding new content. That's part of what we're working on now. And will be always is to identify new content, new topics that are going to be beneficial to parents and to others who work with those families.
That's exactly right.
So, you know, it's good for case managers and social workers and therapists and other folks too. Because if we're kind of learning together, again, we're talking the same language, we're learning expectations, that we kind of have the same ideas about what we're doing, it just makes things flow better. And I think the whole trusting relationship issue gets better. So I think, you know, we've talked enough probably about that, but I wanted to, before we close this episode, Karen, is to just give you a little bit of an opportunity to share anything that you might want to share about NFPA in general, about our strategic plan, about, you know, kind of where we're going, what we're doing, Just a little bit about the future.
Sure. Well, NFPA is celebrating its 50th anniversary. And so we're very excited about that. And we are about, a year and a half? Is that right, Irene? Almost 2 years into our strategic plan? We're a year and a half into our strategic plan. That we as the members of the board of directors, along with some of our wonderful state affiliate members, helped us develop and then also continue to work with us on it. But we're very excited. We have some wonderful relationships with national sponsors that see that what we do at NFPA in terms of advocating and training for foster kinship and adoptive families is so important, that they've come right along beside us and have sponsored us financially. And so that's wonderful. In fact, this Coffee with Caregivers is sponsored by United Healthcare, who's a wonderful partner to us. And the development of the NFPA-TI is another huge development with us at NFPA. Also, we've been able to partner with CHAMPS, the whole CHAMPS campaign, which is Children Need Amazing Parents, which is sponsored by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. And so, that's another wonderful partnership that we have with a national organization that produces, that does a lot of things. One of which is produces wonderful reports and white papers that have a lot of data associated with them, so that it makes us be able to go and advocate at the national level with Congress, and to be able to access for if there are needed changes in the child welfare system. I'm trying to think of other things. Those are just some huge things that we have so much going on, and those are ones that are just huge. We have things that the average person doesn't see, because our strategic plan, we have 3 different groups. We have one group that focuses on board development, one group that focuses on membership, and another group that focuses on operations. So a lot of the things in the plan, the average person may not see because they're operational in nature. It may be looking at how our financial reports are categorized with our accountant, which, the average member doesn't see that and probably doesn't want to see that. But it's a big deal for us as an organization to have that kind of information. So I think we, in the last year and a half as a board of directors, have worked very, very diligently and very hard on our strategic plan to really advance the NFPA. And, as we move into the next 50 years of representing foster kinship and adoptive families, that we are a strong voice, that we're a strong voice with our members, that we're a strong voice with all of the families, including the birth families, that we have things to offer the birth families in partnership with the birth families, as well as foster kinship and adoptive families, and that we also have a wonderful relationship with our federal partners at U.S. Health and Human Services and the Children's Bureau, as well as relationships with members of Congress. So we're very excited about the future of NFPA, and I think we're only just getting started.
I agree. I think that the next 50 years is going to be some hold on to your hat kind of years, maybe. Because I think that, more and more people are really starting to understand the need for support for the caregivers in this country and in the foster care system. And that truly the foster families and the kinship care families are the true backbone of the foster care system. And sure, if we can prevent families from being separated from one another, oh my goodness, then that's what we should, as communities, do. We should be able to provide services that will keep kids safe while staying at home. But we know in reality that can't happen 100% of the time, and that there are families who will have to have separation, at least for a while. And there needs to be families for those children to go to. The system hasn't been working very well over the last quite a few years. I mean, I don't know if it'll ever work perfectly, because I don't think there can ever be a perfect when we're healing human beings, because we're all different. And so it takes different things to heal each person. But, that doesn't mean that we just throw up our hands and say, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's too hard. But we do have a lot of folks that do that, because it is hard to care for other people's kids and keep your own family sane and healthy at the same time, right?
That's absolutely correct.
But like every single foster parent I've ever talked to will always say it's it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's absolutely the best thing I've ever done. So I know I learned every day.
Oh,
there wasn't a day went
absolutely
by
right.
27 years that we fostered that I didn't learn something from the children who had joined our family or from their parents. Because one thing I learned really early on too is that parents of these kids were much more like me than they were different from me.
That's exactly right.
By the grace of God, that wasn't my family situation, right? And I think soon we can embrace that and recognize the differences in people and respect the differences in people, and know that, when we learn the heart of a parent, I learned I could fight like hell for these parents when I learned where their hearts really were for their kids, and I knew they had promise and they had purpose and they had potential. Then that's what these families need. They need people to believe in them. I think that's what NFPA can do for this country, is help spread that word about how important it is and the way we look at the system as a whole, but certainly how we look at the families that created the need for this system in the first place. Well, Karen, I think our time is definitely up for the day. Thank you for being our
thank you.
this next 3 months. And I'm sure we'll be calling on you again at some point to join us, especially if we have some new things to talk about with NFPA. So I just want to invite everybody to remember to tune in again next week, Tuesday, at 10 a.m. Central Time on our Facebook page to be a part of this. And if you can't be at your device at that time, you can always go to our main website and go down on the home page, scroll down a ways, and you will find all of the past episodes. And those are loaded in usually the day that afternoon or the day after the episode airs. So there's it is on your screen. You can see it. Just go right there and listen in anytime that you aren't able to listen to us live. So thank you all so much. Be blessed.